Well, aren't you glad that love has a voice? And that really ties into what I wanted to talk to you about today, or about what God's been dealing with me about the last several weeks, and that's pray and obey. Because love does have a voice, and if we pray, which that's what the voice of love is prayer, and it's communication with God both ways. We talk to Him, He talks to us. And anyway, the last several weeks, pastors have been putting out the call for prayer. They've been putting out the call to show up for intercessory prayer on Sunday night and on Wednesday night. Some of us have been very obedient. Some of us have struggled with obedience. Some of us have been out, but with good reason. We have jobs, we have this, we have that, and that's all understandable. But the first exhortation, or one of the first I did, was about preparing for the storm. And the first key to preparing for the storm was tuning in. Because somebody knows something more than you when it comes to that hurricane. And when it comes to the things of the Spirit and the storms of the Spirit, there's someone who knows more about the storms than us. So we really do need to tune in. So if you haven't been tuning in, then there's no condemnation. Tune in now. If you have tuned in, then great. Let's tune in some more, because we can always tune in a little bit better. One of the first examples of pray and obey is probably found in Genesis chapter 6, and it's Noah. And you got to think about this from Noah's perspective, because in Genesis 1:6 it says the mist came up from the earth to water the earth. So there had been no rain. So God tells Noah, it's going to rain, build a boat. I don't know about you, but I'd have been going, you want me to do what? Because it's going to do what? I mean, it wasn't logical. It didn't make sense. And but God had something in mind, because after the flood came covenant. And God had covenant in mind throughout this whole thing. But obedience was so key. And Noah didn't even have a clue, I don't think, to how key that obedience was. There are 2 or 3 instances in my own life that I can think about obedience and prayer where it has literally been life or death. And I don't think a lot of times we take the time to tune in, because a lot of times we look back at life, and when we do, there's one of 2 responses to looking back. It's if only I, if only you, if only we. Then there's the response of, I don't want to know what if. And thankfully, the things that I want to share with you today are the thank God, because I don't want to know what ifs. One of those, God had awakened me at 5:30 in the morning to pray several years ago. Those of you who know me, you know that was an act of God, because I don't get up before 10 or 11. I mean, I'm a night person. Anyway, it wouldn't lift, and I had prayed and prayed and prayed solid until a little after 9 a.m. And I did not know then the story that I was going to hear later that afternoon. One of the employees that worked for me, her name was Monica. Actually, her dad was a pastor. Imagine that. But she had got up to leave for Houston at a little after 5 a.m. She had decided to leave her children asleep in the bed, whom she had planned on taking with her and just making a day of it. But she decided they were sleeping peacefully. She's just going to leave them, let them sleep. So she gets to Houston, and she goes in one building. She comes out, and the other appointments that she has are pretty close within range. So she decides, I'm just going to walk. I'm not going to try to find a parking space and fight with traffic. I'll just walk. Thank God she did. She came back to her car a little after 9. Time sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? A little after 9. She opens the door to her car, and out rolls a water moccasin. Now, she lives out in the sticks. This is in Houston. So I imagine that snake had probably been in her car the whole trip. What if? Don't know. I'm glad I don't know. The other story was when I was in Panama. I was on a mission trip. And I was in a village with a few other, or several other people. We were heading to another village the next morning. So I was awakened before most of the group to leave to go to the next village. And a little while after we left, a cobra had rolled out of the rafters of the church that we had been sleeping in. And it landed exactly where my sleeping bag had been shortly before. Now, during that trip, I had a group of ladies praying for me. And when I got back to the States, the first thing I did was I said, this particular day, this particular night, did anything in particular happen in prayer? One lady says, you know, I had a dream about a snake that night. I'm glad she did. I'm glad she woke up and prayed and took authority over that thing, too. I said all that to say that obedience is key and prayer is key. So I'm putting out the plea along with pastors, come to prayer. You don't know what you're affecting. And you may never know, but then again, you may hear the story this afternoon or tomorrow or next week. You don't know. So if you would, repeat this with me. I refuse to allow my life to be a what if. I want my life to be, thank God I don't know what if. I will pray, I will tune in, and I will be obedient.